Hello and welcome back to the Ahenfie Rabbitry YouTube channel. In our previous video, we talked about the effect of heat on rabbit reproduction, and we discussed this in the context of the buck or the male rabbit as well as the female or the doe. And we saw all the negative effects that heat stress, that is temperatures above 29 degrees Celsius or 85 degrees Fahrenheit, has on the reproduction of our rabbits. And I did promise a solution. I did promise to give you tips and tricks that you can implement on your farm to ensure that your animals are still doing well and performing very well during these hot seasons. Unfortunately, that video got a little bit longer than I had expected, and therefore I had to cut it a bit short. But here in this video, I want to give you those tips and tricks that you, the farmer, if you implement in your farm, it's going to help your animals to keep cool, and it's going to make them perform at their best for you, even in the hot seasons of summer or in the dry seasons as we have it in many parts of Africa. So stick and stay with me to the end, because these tips and tricks I'm hopeful will help you whether you are a newbie at rabbit farming or even if you are an experienced farmer. So let's dive right into it. So one of the most effective ways to keep your rabbit cool is by looking for ways to improve their living space where you keep them, be it in your hatches or whether they are in a room or wherever you keep them. You, the farmer, as the temperatures go high during the summertime or during the dry seasons, you need to think through and identify ways that you can improve their living space so that they don't experience too much heat. Now, how do you do that? If your hatches or your cages are in an area where there is direct sunshine on your rabbits, you want to find a way to protect them from the direct sunshine, because it has been shown in several studies that when rabbits have direct sunshine on them, their body temperature rises very quickly, especially during the hot times of the day. And therefore, you have to ensure that your hatches are not in an area where there is direct sunshine on your animals. So what do? You must create some shade. You can do this either by having some cloth or a tent or anything that can block the direct sunlight on your animals. That is going to be one of the main ways you can prevent your animals from excessive heat or getting heat stress. So this is number one. The second thing you can do to improve their living environment is by enhancing ventilation. You want to ensure that the hatches are very well ventilated, because rabbits need a little bit of airflow all the time, but you don't want them to be sitting directly in front of a fan to be blowing the air directly on them, because that can give them respiratory problems. But you want to ensure that there is a breeze through your hatch or your cages, and therefore it helps very well when you have mesh at the windows or at the side and side. At Ahenfie Rabbitry, you see the way our cages are built. The cages are built with wire mesh that allows free flow of air to pass through the cage, and this breeze helps to keep your animals cool. Rabbits lose heat especially through their ears. The ears have a lot of blood vessels, and these blood vessels are what carry the heat to the surface so that it can be blown off the body and they will cool off a bit. And therefore, you need to create a space and the environment such that this breeze can be established so that your animals can keep cool. So ventilation is key. It includes the way the building is. If they are in a building, there must be enough windows to help carry the air through. Ventilation in rabbit farming is a very, very important thing, not just to help to lose heat, but even to help to carry away some of the ammonia in their urine, so that the room always feels fresh, and it also gives the animals fresh air to breathe. And therefore, you need to ensure when the temperatures are getting high, especially, you have to create a space for the animals. If your hatches are not built to allow, and your building is not such that ventilation is very easy. You have to find a way to create it, whether you install some kind of fans at the ends of the room to create that breeze across the room. And so this is important. We've talked about your hatch positioning, avoid direct sunshine on the animals, sunlight on the animals. We've talked about ventilation, ensuring that there is enough ventilation in your room or in the hatches so that the animals can keep cool. The other thing you can do to improve their living area is by providing cooling mats or tiles. Sometimes people place ceramic tiles in their hatches, and these ceramic tiles often provide a cool and comfortable surface for your animals. When they lie on it, they feel cool because ceramics somehow are able to always keep cool even when the ambient temperature is high, and therefore this is very, very good. Some you can buy some from shops, or you can buy it from anywhere that you can get good ceramic tiles. At Ahenfie Rabbitry, we don't have ceramic tiles at the moment because we have other means that we believe are helping the animals to keep cool. But it would not hurt, for example, for us to even add on these cooling tiles to make sure that these animals are enjoying the best of the weather even when the temperature outside is very, very hot. Another thing you can do to bring down the temperature in the area is by providing some sort of misting systems. Misting systems, they are these mechanized systems that are set up to often blow a little bit of water vapor in the air to cool the ambient temperature. Now, these are specifically built for that. You don't want a situation that it is just going to wet the animals and create dampness in the farm, but it is specifically built to sprinkle just very gentle droplets of water to ensure that the animals are keeping cool. So that is another way you can ensure that the living environment or the living area of the rabbits are actually optimized to make it easier for them to deal with the heat. So that is one key thing. Now, we've talked about 4 things here that you can do to improve their living environment. We've talked about the positioning of your hatches. We talked about the ventilation. We've talked about providing cooling mats or tiles. We've also talked about providing a kind of a misting system. If your setup permits this kind of arrangement, it is very, very helpful for you to do that. So another thing that really works wonders for rabbits during the hot seasons of the year is frozen water bottles. Frozen water bottles. Now at Ahenfie Rabbitry, we have invested in this deep freezer here, and we fill bottles with water and we keep it in the freezer so that it gets frozen. And during the daytime, when the temperature goes very high, we put these bottles in the cages for the animals, and they are able to sleep by it. They try to get their bodies very close to it because it is cold, and it helps them to cool down. It helps them to cool down. So you could consider this. If you feel your setup allows for such a thing, you can easily get yourself some water bottles and fill them with water, and then you put it in the cages. I mean, you freeze it and you put it in the cages for the animals so that it will help them to cool down. Just keep in mind that sometimes they try to chew on the bottles, and so you want to keep an eye out, otherwise the bottle might end up leaking and all that. But it helps. It really, really helps to keep them cool during the hot times of the day. The next thing we want to discuss is hydration and feeding tips. In the hot seasons of the year, you have to be very sensitive to water, how much water your rabbits are taking in, and also their feeding, because when the temperature gets very high, rabbits tend to drink a lot of water, and the farmer must ensure that there is always fresh and clean drinking water for your animals. So you need to supply fresh water. You need to check. For those of us who use watering systems like the Ahenfie Rabbitry, you have to ensure, and you have to check every nipple to make sure that it is working very well and it is delivering water, fresh water. Your water supply supply wherever you are getting it from, whether it is a borehole or whatever means you are supplying water to your animals, you need to make sure that your water is clean and it is fresh, because rabbits drink a lot of water when the temperature is hot. This is all in an attempt to cool down. Now, if you're using smaller water tanks or cans to supply water, it's not a bad idea to put things like ice cubes in the water, especially when the temperature is very high. This way, when the rabbits take in, the water is cool enough and it helps them to cool down even faster. So ensure that you are providing fresh water, and the water is not in the direct sunlight or sunshine, and the water is not hot. At Ahenfie Rabbitry, our water comes from this very tank up here, and this tank is seated under the shade of the roofing, and therefore the water is always cool, just like the room itself. There's a lot of ventilation, the water is under a shade, so it's always kept fresh and cool to ensure that when the animals drink it during the hot seasons, they are also constantly refreshed. And therefore you can think about a way to make sure that your water is always cool and fresh for your animals. When it comes to feeding, rabbits don't eat a lot as they would when the temperature goes very high, and so you need to optimize your feeding. You need to look at how much they are eating and supply. It's better to give them smaller portions over a time than to put so much feed, especially during the daytime when the temperature is hot. They don't tend to eat a lot, and therefore if you pile the food there and you're not careful, the food might start decomposing, or if you don't change it, or you will be wasting the feed. So what you need to do is to feed them very early in the morning when the temperature hasn't gone too high, and then also late in the evening when the temperature is cool. That way they can eat a lot more, and then you don't waste the feed as well. So it's very, very, very important. Now, if you can also provide some kind of frozen treats. You know, it's frozen, and when they take it, it's in a way helping them to cool down. So think about it, but don't give them too much sugary fruits, because this can give them digestive issues. So it's very, very important that you keep that in mind. So here we've discussed 3 main things you can do as far as hydration and feeding is concerned. We said supply fresh water, we said ensure that you are feeding them at the cold times of the day, and we said that make sure that if it's possible, you can also throw in a frozen treat every now and then. We don't constantly do this at Ahenfie Rabbitry, but you're welcome to try it, because it can help keep your animals cool during the hot seasons of the year. But avoid sugary treats, or limit it as much as possible, so that you don't give your animals digestive issues. Another thing that you, the farmer, must be very, very vigilant on is monitoring the health of your rabbits. Remember, the animals are at risk, or they are in danger when the temperature is too high and there's a lot of heat, ambient heat. So you have to look out for signs of heat stress. The earlier you spot it, the better you'll be able to address the situation. As with any condition with rabbits, any health condition with rabbits, if you spot it early, you have a better chance of mitigating it. And therefore, you, the farmer, you must keep a close eye on your rabbits, especially during the hot seasons of the year. You must make it a habit of visiting their hatches or going to them a few times during the day, so that you can pick up signs and symptoms of heat stress very, very quickly. All right, so what do you look out for as far as heat stress is concerned? What are the signs and the symptoms you should be looking out for? Number one sign you can look out for, or you need to look out for, is panting or rapid breathing. Rabbits, as we said in the previous video, they normally breathe very fast. But when they are experiencing heat stress, you notice that their breathing is even faster. And if you've been close to your rabbit, you will know how they breathe, the normal way they breathe. And so when you notice that has gone high or it has changed, and they are panting or gasping for air and they are breathing very rapidly, you must notice that this is an early sign of heat stress, and you need to do something. The next thing is lethargy or weakness. You know, when when rabbit is experiencing heat stress, they become very, very weak. They start showing signs of disorientation and weakness, and you see them looking very weak. You must quickly act, otherwise you might lose your animals. The other sign you will notice is the redness and warmth of their ear. Okay, you will notice that the rabbit's ear has turned red. Remember, we said that the ears of the rabbit is one of the ways they use to lose heat when they are feeling very, very hot, because the blood vessels are in there to carry the hot blood to their ear, and the breeze in the room and the well ventilated room will help the heat to go out of their body. But if you notice this and the rabbit is really getting weak and getting disoriented and is panting, then you must do something very quickly, otherwise your rabbit might go into shock, heat shock. Now, you should also watch out when the rabbit is stretching out flat all the time. That is another way of the rabbit trying to tell you that I am feeling too much heat and I need to cool down. Okay, so what can you do as a rabbit farmer when you notice these things? One of the first things you can do is to remove the rabbit and take it to a well ventilated space, especially if it is not at a place where the ventilation is good. Take it out of that space, because that's where the heat is killing it. So take it out, put it at a place where the heat is not too much or the ventilation is very good, in a cool place, and then you can sprinkle some cold water on the ears or wet the ear a little bit, but don't also submerge the animal in cold water. If you do that, you will give it cold shock and it might die. And so it's very, very gentle treatment with some cold damp material on the ear and on the paws. It will greatly help the animal to cool down and help you to save your rabbit. So this is the one way you can deal with heat stress. All right, once you see the signs of the heat stress, you must act, and we've talked about exactly what to do. Remember to move the animal to a cool place. You give it some cold water, and you also wet the ear with something damp, and you avoid submerging it into cold water. Please don't do that, otherwise you give it shock and it will die. Now you have to also frequent the place. You need to visit the farm or the hatches as often as possible. Now, so these are some of the things you must do to keep your animals cool and healthy during the summer or the hot seasons of the year. But it's not the best thing to always be firefighting. So what can you do long term? The solutions we've proposed so far, these are the things you can do when you are in the middle of the situation. But as a farmer, you must think sustainability. What can you do in the long term to make sure that you are always ready for the hot seasons of the year? One of the things you can do is to plant shade trees, especially if you're in an area where you don't have a lot of shade around your farm. In places like China, where rabbit farming is really some of the biggest things they are doing, the farms are often located in the middle of trees, or there are trees around the big farms to provide that kind of shade for the farms. Even though they still have temperature controlled rooms where they keep their rabbit and monitor the temperature and the inside of the room and humidity and all the ambient conditions, they still have trees planted around the farm. And we in Africa, or in places where we don't have this kind of complicated setup or advanced setup, we can do the simple things by planting trees around our rabbit farms to ensure that with time they will grow and they will provide the necessary shade that our farms need to keep cool during the dry seasons or the summertime. At Ahenfie Rabbitry, we did this. As you can see, we planted these trees barely a year ago, and they are already growing to the place where we can get shade from them for the farm. And so you can see all these trees at the back of the farm here, those at the side here. These were planted barely a year ago, except maybe this one, and yet they are all doing very well, and we are hopeful that in the next year or two this whole place is going to be covered with shade, and our animals are even going to enjoy much better when the temperatures go high. So that is one of the first things I will recommend. Plant trees. If you are in a place where you can plant trees, plant trees. It will help you greatly as you deal with the hot seasons of the year. The other thing you can do if you don't have this kind of hatches that we use here is to optimize it, upgrade your hatches. You know, spend a little bit, or if you like, find not so expensive wire meshes and use those to construct your hatches. Or you can mix the wire mesh together with the wood, so that ensure that the wood is not blocking the areas that you can have your the ventilation or your breeze. So if you haven't, if you're only using wood kind of hatches, it may be a good idea to get a bit of wire mesh at certain portions of the hatch, so that it will allow for this free flow of the of breeze to help to cool the animal. Because remember, as we said, when there is a breeze, it helps a lot during the summertime. And then the last thing I would like to recommend also, as you prepare or have as a strategy for your long-term solutions in dealing with heat times or hot times of the year, is to have an emergency plan. I mean, as humans, we have emergency plans for ourselves. Why not have one for your rabbits? Think through the whole process. If my animals suffer heat shock, if you don't yet have a plan on how to deal with it, like a first aid measure or something, what can you do to make sure that when the animals are having heat shock, or when there's heat wave, how can you handle it? You must maybe set up some kind of an outdoor system, or an outdoor place, a small outdoor place, where in case you notice that an animal is suffering heat shock, this will be the place where the animal can recover or recuperate. So some kind of infirmary. If you don't have that in your farm, this is not too easy to demarcate. Set up a cage that is at a place where that place is always cool, and that the ventilation is good, and that you can keep a close eye on the animal. So that's one place you can set up and say, okay, this is a strategy that I'm going to have in case my animal is experiencing heat stress. I will quickly move it to this place. And that place, you can also have some kind of a portable cooling system. You may not be able to afford a cooling system for your entire farm, like the Ahenfie Rabbitry, for example. The way we are set up, we can't set up air conditioners here. Our building is having all these spaces around it. Air conditioners won't be effective here, but we can have an enclosure, a small space somewhere where we can have air condition, so that if we notice that an animal is critically stressed by heat, we can quickly move that animal to that space, and it will be comfortable, and it will recover very, very quickly. And so these are some of the tips that I would recommend that you can put in place to ensure that you are prepared for the hot seasons of the year, and your animals are kept in good shape and in peak performance during those times of the year. As a bonus tip, I would say that focus on breeding heat tolerant rabbit. We all love rabbits in different colors and in different shades and in different breeds, and so sometimes it's difficult to convince people otherwise. But stick with breeds that are heat tolerant. Have it in your breeding plan to gradually select for breeds, improve your breed, such that that a time will come, you have particular kinds of animals on your farm that whether the heat comes or not, they will still deliver and perform very well for you. So that's just a little bit of a bonus tip in there, and that brings us to the end of our video on what you can do to protect your animals during the hot seasons of the year, and how to keep them healthy, how to keep them comfortable, how to keep them performing for you throughout the year. And so thank you so much for sticking and staying with us till the end. It's really been a pleasure, and I truly greatly appreciate your time. Thank you, and we will meet right back here at Ahenfie Rabbitry when we discuss yet another very interesting topic that will keep all of us rabbit farming doing very well. And so until then, it is bye-bye from the Ahenfie Rabbitry, and see you later. Take good care of those rabbits, and bye-bye for now. Cheers.